Okay, what we're looking at here is an iPhone 14 and 3 icons at the top. Today I'm going to talk about a technical sounding subject called data instances. This is used within NMEA 2000 to distinguish between what are effectively two identical devices. But first, let's just take a look at where we talk about this in much more detail on our website. So I'm going to tap the Safari icon. That's taken us, in this case, directly to the page where we talk about tanks, batteries, and so on. And there's quite a lot of information there describing how the system works. It's well worth visiting. If I just turn this landscape, flick to the top, you can see there at the top of the screen, that's the address of our website, guardiandigital.tech. Lots of information there, well worth visiting, and we're adding links to the videos that we create as well to try and put it all together. Anyway, rather than actually talk about what the website says, let's go and try a practical demo of using batteries and tanks, etc. within navCenter. So let's fire up navCenter. And we're just looking at a single window here with depth on it. We need to add a bit more detail. So I'm going to stroke down in the top half of the screen, and that's exposed the menu. I'm going to actually edit this view or page. To do that, I tap the symbol on the left hand side, which is a pencil within a square. So I tap that. Now you can see it says that we can edit a page and do various things. So I'm going to add a row on the top right hand there, and at the very bottom you can see add a row. I'm going to tap that twice. Where we're currently showing depth, I'm going to tap depth, and I'm going to choose from environment. Within environment is where we keep the various local instances of batteries, fuel tanks, water tanks, and grey water tanks. You can see on this system it's really only batteries that are active. So I'm going to choose for that particular view, which was depth, I'm going to change it to battery 1 and tap done. Now I'm going to tap done at the top right of the screen, and we have our new view. If I just stroke up upward in the top half of the screen, I can hide the menu. We've got a bit more space to work with. So right at the very top we have something which we've named house battery and given it a little lightning sign, and you can see it's showing its voltage, its current charge. In fact, this current is positive, so it's being charged at 5 amps. It's 90% at 90% capacity. It's pretty warm at 26 degrees centigrade. That of course can be displayed in Fahrenheit if you wish, and it's in the bulk state of charge, which is probably, it's a little surprising. I think it should, but that's what it's reporting. But it is a solar. I happen to know that this is a solar array. What I'm going to do here now is I'm just going to hold my finger down on that window, the one that's entitled house battery, and that's initiated a long press, and you can see in the bottom left hand corner of the screen of the view a menu has appeared. I'll tap that, and what we're seeing here, top left, this is called, locally this is known as battery 1. Globally it's set to use the NMEA instance number 0, and I've given it the name of house battery. Perhaps we can change that, and I'll just type the word solar in there as well, and we'll change our lightning there. What should we have instead? We'll just leave it as it is. That's how easy it is to actually change the name, and this name now will be remembered forever with navCenter until you delete navCenter from your system, if you have to do that. Below it we have two batteries. The one on the left there is called engine start battery. We've given that name earlier. And the one on the right is called battery 3. So you can see that engine start battery has no values for state of charge, temperature, or state. If I expose the menu on this view, so if I hold my finger down on engine start, I have a different menu here, and I can say, well, we don't see these. If I just move the battery down, you can see there's nothing being sent out by this transducer for state of charge, temperature, or state. To save some space, I switched them off. I tap done, and that's interesting. No, I don't. Oh, that's fine. It's darkened simply because they only display this information every now and again. So now we actually see engine start battery voltage and current, and it's easier to see without the data that wasn't actually being sent. So if I just hold on that view, that menu disappears. I can go to battery 3, and I've displayed its menu. I can do the same thing here. So I've said just display the current. Yeah. You can see it's assigned to NMEA instance 2. If I try and assign it to a different instance, say 1, I'm going to get an error message because it's already mapped to the local instance called battery 2. We know that because we were just looking at it. So, okay, set this back to 2. It's a convention that a local instance has an instance number 1 above an NMEA instance, but it's a convention that's broken often, and you can assign, using this view here and menu, you can assign a battery 3 or any of the other instance views to any number that NMEA 2000 is using, and you can change that at will. There's no problem doing that. I'm going to give this a new name, and I'll just call it Bank 3, just to show you how this works. Now, whereas at the moment it says battery 3 there, I press done, it'll now say Bank 3. I'll just hide these menus for no good reason really. And we see we have battery 6 here, which is not showing us any information. So if I expose its menu, I tap on the menu, it says it's assigned to instance 5, but there's clearly no data coming through from instance 5. But I've run some tests on this particular system, and I know that in fact there's a solar array which has a data instance of 239. So I'm going to assign that. I shall call this, if I can spell, solar, and tap done. Now battery 6 will talk to the NMEA 2000 system, and it should start reporting information that's coming in from the solar array that's using the data instance 239. And you can see that it's doing exactly that. And you can also see that it's different from the other solar array. It's reporting slightly different values, and it does not report its state. And we know what to do about that. If we want a little more space, we can just say, well, don't bother showing us state. And there we have a slightly cleaner view. Now, at the very bottom there, we have water tank 1. There is no data for tanks on the system I'm using at the moment, but everything works precisely the same, except you don't have as much information presented by a tank. If I expose its menu and tap it, you'll see that this water tank is attached to instance 0. I can give it a name, port tank, shall we call it. But there's no opportunity to adjust what values are displayed, because generally speaking, the tanks are only 2, level and capacity, and they all should report that. Now, what should we be doing now? Okay. Just a bit of information about login. I'll do this very quickly. I've exposed the menu again. This is the system-wide menu, and I'm going to tap the icon on the far right, the gear. This is going to display navCenter's settings. So I'll tap that. Here we are. I'm going to page down until I get to logging. And we can see that logging is inactive. I'm going to tap that. At the very top, where it says select type of messages to log, I'm going to tap errors, and I'm going to select NMEA instances. What this is going to do, it'll start logging information every time an NMEA instance, or basically a transducer that contains the ability to transmit its own instance number. Whenever one of those is detected on the system, it's logged. And that can be useful for us to see what's going on within the system. If I press start, the login is active. I'm going to tap the button top left to go back, and I'm going to tap done. So we have a little bar there telling us logging is active, and it will now be recording information about instances. I'm going to just page to the left. In fact, I'll expose the bottom. We're on page 1 of 10. If I go to the left, this is the final page, and you can see information rolling past, and you don't need to read it at this point, but it's actually reporting a lot of information about instances, in particular rudder. So if I now go back to settings, I go to the log, I tap that, I stop logging, and I have an option there, save to files. So I'm going to tap save to files. Having done that, I'll come out of here, I tap done. I'm going to put navCenter to one side, and I'm going to go into the Files app on this iPhone. I tap that Files icon, and you read at the top it says on my iPhone. It's already taken us directly to your iPhone, but depending on how you've set up your system, you might come to this browse option first, and there you have a choice of locations. On my iPhone, it says iCloud Drive and recently deleted. navCenter only writes directly to your phone for the obvious reason is that if you're at sea, you may not have an internet connection, but you definitely have the device because you're running navCenter on it. So I tap on my iPhone. You'll see near the bottom navCenter with this icon in the folder. Tap that. And the log that we've just taken at 1324, I'll tap that. And there's a lot of information there. And the easiest way to deal with this is to send it to a laptop or an iPad, a larger device basically, where you can edit it down to find out the information you want. You do that with the button on the bottom right hand, the share button, and there you can use all sorts of, you can use email, AirDrop, and what have you. I often use AirDrop. I find that the most useful. So that was just a quick overview of how you can use the login system to get to report on all the instances that are active on the device, and that'll help you sort out things. Often things are wrong. I know, for instance, on this system, two of the three rudders that are all reporting information on their rudder angle use the same instance, so that's very confusing, but there's ways around that. Another thing that's of interest when you're working with tanks and batteries and other items that can have multiple sources is to see what the state of the device is on your system. So I'm going to swipe from right to left, so I page forward, and I've gone on to another page. Now I'm on page 2 of 10. So I'm going to edit this page, and let's see, what shall I do? I shall remove the apparent wind icon at the bottom, that view. I'll tap wind apparent. I'm going to go into environment, and I'm going to select a view called devices. Tap done again. And this is a view that can be very helpful. It's a beginning for us in that we've only just started coding it, and we're going to be adding a lot more information. Information is gathered by directly querying devices on the system and waiting for their response. You can see we've queried all of them, but some of them don't respond immediately. As I'm paging down here, you can see, in fact, Victron Entry, the batteries and the solar, that's interesting. There's this autopilot at 204 and so on. But your system will be quite different. But it's very useful for finding the source of data, and we'll cover that in another video. So I'll go back to our tanks. I think we've pretty much covered everything as a basic introduction of how you can expose the menu in a tank or a battery or any other data instance type view. I just hold long press, how you tap that. You can change the NMEA instance. This is the number that the device itself is actually using on the NMEA 2000 system. Unfortunately, sometimes they can be these are duplicated, but manufacturers of the devices normally give you software that you can use to change that. That should be the case. And I'd advise you, when you're buying a transducer to measure your tank capacity or your battery state, to make sure that you can in fact change its instance number. They also refer to this using other names, connection ID. Why they do this, I don't know. But anyway, so you can change that to any instance you want, and give it a local name, which is helpful. And with batteries in particular, you can choose which information you want displayed. Yeah. And if you've just got very little room, you could actually simply just display the voltage for battery 1. And that could be handy if you just want to keep an eye on that. Okay, and that's it for data instances.